The mystery of D.B. Cooper, the truth that was never told. The rain pounded against the asphalt of Portland International Airport that afternoon on November 24, 1971, as a man in a dark suit and sunglasses walked with measured steps toward the Northwest Orient Airlines counter. No one paid much attention to him, just another businessman in a hurry to get to Seattle carrying a worn leather briefcase. When he handed over his ticket for Flight 305, he signed the name Dan Cooper, a seemingly insignificant detail that would later become one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in American history. What no one knew at that moment was that a meticulously crafted plan was about to unfold, and the world would never forget his name. Or at least, the name he had chosen to use. The flight from Portland to Seattle was supposed to take only 30 minutes, a short, routine trip, but shortly after takeoff, Cooper subtly gestured for flight attendant Florence Schaffner. With calm precision, he handed her a small note. At first, she didn't bother to read it. She was used to receiving notes from lonely passengers trying to flirt. But when Cooper leaned slightly forward and murmured in a steady tone, "Miss, I suggest you read that now. I have a bomb." Everything changed. Her hands trembled as she unfolded the paper and read the words that would forever echo in the annals of American crime. "I have a bomb in my briefcase. I want $200,000 in unmarked bills, 4 parachutes, and a fuel truck ready to refuel the plane when we land in Seattle. No tricks, no police, or I will blow this plane up." The tension on board was invisible. None of the passengers knew what was happening. The pilot, William Scott, discreetly informed air traffic control, and within minutes, the FBI was involved. But the government could not risk the lives of innocent civilians. They followed Cooper's demands to the letter. Meanwhile, he remained composed, even polite. He sipped bourbon with soda and made casual conversation with the flight crew, never showing the slightest hint of panic or uncertainty. He was not a desperate criminal. He was a man with a plan. After landing in Seattle, the money and parachutes were delivered. Cooper released the passengers, keeping only the pilots and flight attendant Tina Mucklow on board. He then ordered the aircraft to take off again, this time bound for Mexico. But by now, everyone knew he never intended to reach his stated destination. With precise instructions, he demanded that the plane fly at a low altitude, at a reduced speed, and with the landing gear deployed. He knew the Boeing 727 well, perhaps too well to be just an amateur. Then, somewhere between Seattle and Reno, over the vast, stormy wilderness of Washington state, Cooper did the unthinkable. He strapped on one of the parachutes, secured the bag of money to his body, and opened the plane's rear stairway. The wind roared like a wild beast inside the cabin, and in a single decisive moment, he jumped. He vanished into the night without a trace. When the plane landed in Reno, the FBI found only an open stairway and an empty space where a hijacker should have been. What happened after that jump became legend. For decades, the FBI followed thousands of leads, investigated numerous suspects, unearthed potential evidence, yet never definitively proved who D.B. Cooper was or if he even survived. Some of the ransom money turned up years later, buried along the Columbia River's banks, but no solid proof of his fate ever surfaced. But what if we told you the official story never revealed the whole truth? What if everything we think we know about D.B. Cooper was nothing more than a carefully crafted smokescreen, a deliberate distraction to hide something even bigger? Get ready to discover the truth that was never told before. For decades, investigators, conspiracy theorists, and amateur detectives have tried to piece together what happened after D.B. Cooper disappeared into the night. The official narrative suggests that he either perished in the wilderness or managed to escape, only to vanish without a trace. But what if that's not the truth? What if the FBI's inability to find him was not due to a lack of evidence, but rather a deliberate effort to keep the truth buried? The deeper one looks into the case, the more anomalies surface, unexplained details that hint at something far more sophisticated than a lone hijacker making a desperate escape. First, there's the undeniable fact that Cooper knew exactly what he was doing. His demands were precise. He requested 4 parachutes, not 1, not 2, but 4. This forced authorities to assume he might take a hostage with him, preventing them from sabotaging the equipment. He also selected a Boeing 727, one of the few commercial aircraft at the time, equipped with an aft staircase that could be lowered mid-flight. That feature wasn't widely known to the public, yet Cooper seemed intimately familiar with its mechanics. And then there was his knowledge of aerodynamics. He instructed the pilots to maintain a speed of 200 knots, a low altitude of 10,000 feet, and flaps at 15 degrees, all perfect conditions for a controlled parachute jump. This was not the reckless act of a desperate man. This was the work of someone who had studied aviation, military tactics, or both. Then there's the weather. Many experts argue that the storm that night should have made Cooper's escape nearly impossible. The winds were fierce, the rain was relentless, and the terrain below was unforgiving. Dense forests, icy rivers, and jagged mountains. A man jumping from 10,000 feet into those conditions, wearing only a business suit and loafers, should not have survived. Yet, no body was ever found, no parachute was ever recovered, no conclusive trace of Cooper's remains was discovered. Instead, the only thing that surfaced was a bundle of deteriorated $20 bills from the ransom money, unearthed years later on the banks of the Columbia River. But how did that money get there? Did Cooper intentionally bury it? Or was it planted to mislead investigators? Consider, too, the eerie silence that followed. High-profile criminals don't just disappear without someone eventually talking. If Cooper had accomplices, surely someone would have come forward over the years. If he had died in the jump, why was there no discovery of his remains, no shred of fabric from his suit, no discarded equipment? The FBI spent years combing the forests, questioning suspects, tracking every lead, and yet nothing. Was Cooper just extraordinarily lucky, or was someone ensuring that his trail went cold? Some believe he was an ex-military operative, possibly CIA or Special Forces, testing an experimental escape method under the guise of a hijacking. Others suggest he was part of a larger intelligence operation, perhaps even a Cold War asset, who used the heist as a cover to disappear into a new identity. Documents obtained decades later show that the FBI's initial investigation considered the possibility that Cooper had inside help, perhaps even from within the airline industry or the government itself. But if that was true, why was that angle never fully explored in the official reports? Why was the case eventually closed with more questions than answers? Then there are the strange occurrences that followed. Over the years, several individuals have claimed to be Cooper or to have known him. Some of these confessions were dismissed as hoaxes, but others contained details that were never released to the public. Details only the real Cooper, or someone closely involved, could have known. One such man, a former paratrooper and intelligence officer, allegedly confessed on his deathbed, claiming he had staged the hijacking as part of a government-sanctioned mission that went wrong. His family later discovered documents and coded notes that hinted at connections to covert operations in the early 1970s. But the FBI dismissed his claims, stating that no definitive proof linked him to the crime. Even stranger are the reports that surfaced in the years following the hijacking. Some retired agents have hinted that Cooper's case was intentionally buried under bureaucratic red tape, that certain files went missing, and that the truth was never meant to be uncovered. If that's true, what was the government hiding? Was Cooper working with them or against them? And if he was alive, where did he go? There's also the possibility that Cooper never left the country at all. Some theories suggest that instead of vanishing into the wilderness, he had a carefully planned escape route. Perhaps he was picked up by an accomplice on the ground, or he landed near a predetermined safe house. Some believe he had a new identity waiting for him, forged documents, and an entire network ensuring his disappearance. If that's the case, then the real question isn't whether Cooper survived, but rather who he truly was. One thing is certain: the official version of events leaves too many unanswered questions. The case of D.B. Cooper was declared closed, yet it remains one of the most compelling unsolved mysteries in modern history. Did he die in the jump, or did he outsmart the greatest investigative agency in the world? Was he a criminal mastermind, a military operative, or something else entirely? The truth may be out there, hidden in classified files, buried under decades of secrecy, or perhaps known only by a select few who were never meant to speak. And yet, the legend persists. Maybe, just maybe, the real story of D.B. Cooper has been hiding in plain sight all along.